So I picked this one up recently at an antique store, and I'm naturally drawn to the green ones. So I checked the bottom, and there was some identification, so I brought it home. When I started to research it, there was some information out there about the facility when it was Pabst Beer, but they only mentioned that it was Hoffman Beverage Company in passing. But no one had any names of any Hoffmans for me, so I had to go do my detective work until I finally stumbled on a name. So with that, let's get started on this episode of Antique Bottle Stories. So today's story starts with a guy named Frederick Hoffman. He was born in 1852 in Germany, and he came over to the United States in 1874 at age 22. He settled in New Jersey. He married a lady named Henrietta when he was 31. She was born in New Jersey, but her parents came over from Germany. They ended up having 4 boys: Frederick, William, Rudolph, and Albert. In this 1900 census, Frederick is 47 years old, and he's a soda water manufacturer. And according to Henrietta's obituary, it says here that Frederick Hoffman was the founder of Hoffman Beverage Company. Now, one of the boys, Rudolph, he died when he was 17. It doesn't say what happened. I found a 1907 record for him here that says that Rudolph was a musician. While we're here, why don't we look and see what the other boys are doing? Now, Albert is the youngest one. He's only 10, so he's not listed here. But Frederick is a driver, and William G. is a policeman. So at this point, I'm just going to go in chronological order of the records that I found. So first up is this World War I record for William, which would be about 1917-1918. It says that he's working at F. Hoffman and Sons. So it sounds like a couple, or all of the boys, are working with their dad now. Next up is 1921, Dad dies. I didn't turn up an obituary for him. 5 years later, in 1926, we see William G. as president of Hoffman and Sons, Albert is vice president, and Frederick is secretary-treasurer. In 1927, we have an old book of trademarks. This one's registered to Hoffman Beverages in Newark, New Jersey since 1923, it says. In 1928, here's an ad used in the paper, and we see the bottle here. It looks like it's just a slick, no embossing, with paper labels. This one says raspberry beverage, while this one says cherry beverage. And notice on the bottom that it also says grape as well. Here's a 1929 ad from a grocery store mentioning that they had Hoffman beverages for sale. In this 1930 census, a couple things to note here. We see one of the boys, William, is 43 with his newlywed wife, who is 22 years younger than him. It asks what age they got married, and they say 42 and 20 is when they got married. He's also got his mama living with him, along with Albert, his youngest brother, who is single and 32. Over in the occupation, William is still listed as president, and Albert is still listed as vice president. 1930 in the paper says Hoffman Beverage Company is reputed the largest manufacturer of carbonated beverages in the United States. Apparently there will be a little exposition where the company will set up a booth. It says 16 years ago the Hoffman Company was founded. So that's perfect. We have a start date now of 1914. It says it has about 35,000 customers, and they service the metropolitan area, Connecticut, New Jersey, and Philadelphia. It concludes by saying that the business is excellent for the Hoffman Beverage Company. In 1930, they have a huge ad in the paper, and the bottles still look slick with paper labels. This time they're labeled ginger ale and lime beverage. I zoomed in, and they have 14 flavors listed here. And it says children love Hoffman fruit beverages, and it mentions that it has real fruit. In 1933, the patent office has record of all the flavors that they're producing. Now there's 16, with all the usual flavors, but a few interesting ones like celery, birch beer, grapefruit, sarsaparilla, and lime Ricky. Also in 1933, the paper says that they're getting in some modern equipment soon. In 1935, there was a write-up in a publication called Refrigeration Engineering. It's talking about the Nathan system of brewing, and that Hoffman was the first in the United States to adopt this system. It goes on to describe how it works and its benefits, but what I was interested in more was that it took pictures around the factory. So here's the factory in its heyday. Here's more photos of inside the plant. Here it says the upper fermenting hall and the lower fermenting hall. Here it says installation of two 200-ton centrifugal type refrigeration units. This one says installation of water circulation pumps. That was all that I was able to see with the free preview for that book. So that was in 1935. In 1936, the Patent Office has another record. This time I noticed that there's a drought beer listed in there. 1937 is a little bit of a rough patch for the company. In April, a manager of a Marlboro store sues for $25,000, alleging that he purchased a bottle of ginger ale and the bottle burst and severely cut his hand and fingers. He claims that the company uses inferior quality bottles. I didn't really look into what happened with that case. In June that year, 300 workers went on strike for wages and hours. A couple weeks later, there are picketers outside, which police had to disperse. Apparently, some of the picketers were seen throwing stones and damaging some of the delivery trucks. In August, it's still in full swing. It says the strike is being conducted with tremendous success. There had been no defections from the ranks of the strikers, and the little stuff that the firm is able to manufacture with non-union workers cannot find outlets because the tavern keepers refuse to handle the non-union brew. There's actually a court document here discussing the negotiations of the strike. It says there's been a United Employees Association of the Hoffman Beverage Company formed back in March. They were not satisfied with their pay and working conditions. They had several public meetings, and they appointed 7 officers. They then drafted a proposal to present to the company. The company responded that they doubt that they had support of 51% of the employees. On May 11th, they officially went on strike, and the payroll of the company contains 591 employees at the Newark plant and 421 workers at the other branches. So that's the first that we've heard about other branches. It says at the time of this hearing, which apparently is still going on at the moment, no production work is being done at any of the branches. So here's September 14th, and the announcement of the 3-month strike is now resolved. The attorneys have announced that the working conditions, wages, and hours have been mutually agreed upon. Workers are scheduled to go back to work tomorrow. In the midst of the strike, in August, there's this ad in the paper showing some of the bottles. Now, this is the first time that I see one that's ridged like the one that I have. It's for a club soda. In January the next year, here's a bizarre story. Here's a wife taking the company to court for the death of her husband who died 2 years ago. Her husband was riding on the running board of a truck. Why? I don't know. Well, anyways, the truck gets on the highway where it met up with a Hoffman truck. I cannot picture exactly what happened by the description, but apparently there was a sharp swerve, and the driver noticed at some point that the dude wasn't on the side of the truck anymore. The wife thinks that the guy got squashed between the 2 trucks and that it's Hoffman's fault. But it says here that there's no evidence that the trucks collided. I don't know. I would think that the fault would lie on that husband who decided to ride on the side of a truck while it's moving. Anyways, moving on. In March 1938, a new patent for a Bock beer. Also in 1938, Albert, the youngest Hoffman brother, marries a Hollywood movie star named Mitzi Mayfair. I hadn't heard of her before, so I had to go look her up. She's a cutie. Apparently in February they had called off their engagement, but a month later they tied the knot. He looks like a pretty good-looking guy. The next month, Albert's in the paper again, this time regarding his 50-foot yacht. It caught fire while it was docked. Everyone got off safely, It says the fire destroyed a good bit of it, and to avoid an explosion of the 900 gallons of gas on board, it was tugged midstream. After the fire, it was docked again. It says this boat was built in 1927, costing $75,000. Wow. In 1939, the Hoffman Company applied for an alcohol license. This article confirmed that all the boys maintained their same office positions. 1940, another ad with pictures of the bottles, and they haven't really changed much. Here's 1941, where Hoffman has applied for the alcohol license for another location in Camden, New Jersey. And here's another one for Belmar, New Jersey. Also in 1941, a few more flavors have been added. Cocoa cream and cream soda are the only new ones that I see. 1942, we're on strike again. 400 employees want a wage increase of 20 cents an hour. They're currently getting 95 cents an hour, and they're asking for $1.15. The workers say they want a wage comparable to those of other breweries in the area. The company says that the rate is higher than a good many of their competitors. In January 1943, they seem to be doing pretty well. They're taking up a really big ad in the paper again. In 1943, Albert and Mitzi divorced after about 5 years. It didn't sound like it was that solid to begin with, but it says that they got married after she promised to give up the stage. Well, she ended up leaving him and going back to Hollywood. The divorce says that she deserted him. 1944, we're back on strike again? It says men refused to work yesterday when they were denied a wage increase. Oh, it says this strike wasn't authorized by that union this time. Here, the following year, in July 1945, another strike. This is a different one because it says that this one's been going on for 4 weeks now. Still fighting for better pay. Those Hoffmans are kind of stingy with their pay, huh? Well, a month later, the workers caused the plant to shut down. And a month later, in September, still continuing. 1,200 employees strong. Apparently, the milk distributors nearby have agreed to deliver their soda every other day. A few days after this, an agreement was made. $1.20 an hour for loaders and handlers, and the malt and beer handlers will receive $1.26 an hour. After all that mess, in December, Hoffman sold the company to Pabst Beer. So now 5 years later, 1950, Albert has remarried. It says he's president and general manager of a land holding company. Skipping ahead, in 1933 he dies. I didn't find an obituary for him. The other brother, Frederick, he died in 1981. His obituary has a little photo of him, and it says that he donated part of his property to be a wildlife sanctuary. The other brother, William, he died in 1979, and I didn't find an obituary for him either. So the company's main headquarters was 406 or 407 Grove Street, Newark. Now remember, this is what it looked like in its heyday, 1935. For some reason, it doesn't show the 60-foot water tower that was built in 1930. When Pabst took it over, they changed it to a Pabst bottle. And it was a historic landmark for decades. Pabst occupied the building until 1986, and then it went through various stages of being demolished. And it looks like in 2006 is when the bottle was finally taken down for good. By that time, it was just a brown, rusty remembrance of its former glory. Well, this is what it looks like now. Before it was gone, this publication was able to go in and take pictures of the old factory before it was destroyed. Well, let's look at some examples of bottles I found online. They're not in any kind of chronological order. There are various label designs, some ACL, some paper labels. The ridges change a little bit here and there as well. Mine is the one all the way to the far right. And I see my ridges are even different from the others. Mine has a few ridges at the very top where the others don't. And the date of mine would be 1941. So if this one right here didn't have that dot after it, it would date to 1931. They had used single-digit codes to date during the 30s, but they added a dot after the single digit for the 40s. And then in the 50s, they started 2 digits. And that is going to be it for this one, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching.